Chuck Holton here, coming to you from Jerusalem. And as you can see, I'm actually in the CBN studio here. This is the first time I have to say that I've ever done a YouTube Live in the studio, at least not my home studio. And this is pretty cool. So I did this because, well, it's dark outside for one thing, and it's noisy. There's always that beeper guy that's stalking me, trying to get in the shot. So this is much quieter. It's air conditioned, and it makes me very happy to be here. So I want to talk to you about what's going on in Israel today. And I want to specifically talk about the worst case scenario that Israel might see in this expected attack that we've been told to plan for coming up soon, any moment, as a matter of fact, here in Israel. This has been going on for a couple of days. We were told by the United States, I guess the CIA, and the intelligence forces of intelligence forces of the IDF, the Mossad, that the attack could come anytime within the next 24 to 48 hours, and that was almost 48 hours ago. And so far, the massive attack that they were expecting has not materialized. That doesn't mean it's not going to happen. It just means that, we heard from Hassan Nasrallah today. He's the commander, as you know, of the Hezbollah forces in the north, and their spiritual leader. He gave a speech and explained why they haven't attacked yet. He said that the waiting is part of the punishment. And if he had a chance to come here to Jerusalem, where I am, and to see how people are enduring that terrible punishment of having to wait for this attack, he would see that it's not probably having the effect that he expected it to, because people here are just kind of going about their daily lives. I mean, you know, the Israelis are so resilient, and they've been dealing with this now for more than 300 days, and even longer than that. I mean, they've been under the threat of attack from Hezbollah, Hamas, and Iran and others for much, much longer. So it's not likely that they're going to be shaking in their boots. I haven't really seen people that seemed concerned that much at all. I do know a couple people who have taken some precautions. They're preparing. They're buying a little extra water. And they're one family I know moved their family to a safer location where there's a better bomb shelter that's not 8 floors down the stairs, so that their kids could, be in that safer place. But that's just, normal and reasonable precautions, right? Other than that, as I mentioned yesterday, there's been a kids' summer camp at the YMCA hotel where I'm staying. And so every day there's just hundreds of kids running around out in the front of in the gardens in the front of the hotel and playing games and having a good time. So they don't seem to be too concerned. It's not that they're not planning at all, though. The IDF, as I mentioned yesterday, has been making plans for what happens if they have to move a bunch of people out of the northern part of the country, even the central part of the country, and move them further south in order to get them out of range of the rockets and missiles and drones that Hezbollah could send when they do attack. That's reasonable precautions, but they're talking about setting up tent camps out in the Negev desert, and for perhaps up to 1 million people. Now, I have to tell you, it's pretty hot here right now. It's been in the high 80s, but for some reason it feels a lot hotter than that when I'm walking around between the hotel and the studio and things like that. It feels like it's 100 degrees out there. It is easily 100 degrees in the Negev, probably more. And it would not be comfortable at all if 1 million people had to flee to the Negev in order to be safe. So let's hope and pray that that doesn't happen. But that's one of the worst case scenarios for the Israeli people, at least here in Israel. Now, let's talk about the real threat from Iran, okay? Because a lot of people are, it's interesting, I'm getting a lot of emails from viewers who are not in Israel who seem to be more afraid or more worried about what's about to happen here than the people in Israel are. And, you know, they're hearing all of this, you know, craziness on the news. They're being told all of this news that's like, any moment Israel could be buried under thousands of rockets and missiles. And okay, well, so let's talk about that. I want to give you a real sense from what I understand about the threat from here on the ground in Jerusalem. And I'm hoping it'll make you feel a little bit better. So first of all, we have to tell you that Iran has been preparing for this for a long time. They've been building up their missiles, their drones, their capabilities and their technology for many years. And they have a very sizable arsenal of rockets, missiles, and drones. Okay? And so, with that said, not all of those missiles and rockets and drones can make it to Israel. Israel is about 1,000 kilometers, a straight line distance from Iran, from the nearest point in Iran, okay? Randy Mann is saying they can launch 1,000 drones at any moment. Well, actually, let's talk about that. So they do have probably about 1,000 missiles. These are both ballistic missiles and cruise missiles that can make it from Iran all the way to Israel, that 1,000 kilometers. They have a range that is more than 1,000 kilometers, okay? So listen to what I'm saying here. Iran probably has about 1,000 missiles that can make it from Iran to Israel, okay? Back in April 13th, they fired about 300 rockets, missiles, and drones. But the thing is, they don't have 1,000 missile launchers. Now, let me explain something to you. Iran follows the Soviet strategy when it comes to their missiles, okay? And the Soviet strategy is for all of their missiles to be mobile. And so most of them, not all of them, but most of them are not set up in launch sites that are like dug into the ground or underground or something like that. Why? Well, because if they launch missiles from one site, that site is burned because they know that the United States and the United States and Israel have the capability to triangulate and figure out where the missile was launched from. So if they launch it from a hole in the ground someplace, that place is very quickly going to get bombed by the Israelis, and it's going to get taken out. So it's kind of a one and done. So why would you build a big launch site underground if it's probably going to get bombed as soon as they launch one rocket or one missile out of that, right? Does that make sense? And so they put them on the back of these big missile vehicles. They're not trucks per se. They're like heavy equipment transports that the U.S. military has. They look like hets. And they fire a missile and then they move somewhere else so that they can't be triangulated and blown up. Now, there's two problems with that. First of all, it takes a long time to set up these missiles to fire. And we're not talking about seconds or minutes. We're talking about hours. A highly trained crew can set up one of these missiles to launch in about 6 hours. I'm talking about the ballistic missiles or the cruise missiles. It takes about 6 hours. For a crew that's not so highly trained or maybe is under some stress, it could take a day. It could take 8 hours or more. And so it's not like they're going to fire salvo after salvo after salvo of these missiles. They have far fewer missile launchers than they have missiles. I would say probably in the 300 to 500 range, okay? And so the second problem with having them on these mobile missile launchers is that even though they're mobile, the Israelis and the United States and others have a lot of satellite and signals intelligence that are floating over Iran right now looking at. So they're going to be able to identify those launches as soon as they take place, zero in on those vehicles, and then track those vehicles pretty much anywhere they want to go. So it just the ability to fire a missile and then move, shoot and scoot, as they say, does not actually assist you all that much in avoiding having your missile launch vehicle get evaporated by an Israeli drone or missile or something fired off of an F-35 or something like that. And so it's likely that the Iranians will very quickly start losing their launch vehicles, okay? They are very likely to have their capabilities diminished, not only in terms of their launch vehicles, but in terms of the missiles themselves. Even if the launch vehicles don't get blown up, when you fire a missile, that's it. That missile is done, and you have to go make a new missile. And so they are not going to be able to be making lots of new missiles, and they can't fire all of the missiles that they have available to them because they have to worry about other people, other parties that might attack them. And we're talking about the United States in Iraq. We have the United States has troops in Iraq, in Jordan, in Saudi Arabia, in Qatar, in the UAE, all around. All around Iran, there are American troops and American forces out in the Red Sea, in the Gulf of Aden, in the Indian Ocean. And so we kind of have them bracketed, if you know what I mean. So when they fire these missiles, those missiles are gone. It's like think of it like a kamikaze aircraft. You know, you're not going to get to fly that thing again. Does that make sense? So they will quickly start diminishing in their capabilities. They don't have the ability to sustain a war of attrition when it comes to rockets and missiles. Now, they can't invade Israel, even though Iran has over 500,000 troops that are, under arms right now. The Iranians are not going to march those troops into Israel and take over Israel. This is one of the great drawbacks with missiles. Okay, I want to explain to you this stuff because this is background that's going to help you understand better why we don't have to be quite so scared as many people think they do. Okay, I'm trying to help you understand a little bit better the technology that's at play here and what the realities are on the ground. Okay, so Iran has not fired any of them yet in the last 48 hours, but when they start firing them, you can't take ground with missiles. You can't hold ground with missiles, so they're not going to take over Israel by firing missiles at it. They're also not going to destroy Israel by firing missiles at it. So I want to give you a sense for what the potential is for damage inside Israel from specifically Iranian missiles. Okay, now the Hezbollah missiles are another story. We'll talk about that in a minute. But right now, let's just talk about the Iranian missiles. All right. So the most powerful missile that Iran has at its disposal has a warhead on it that is about 1,500 kilograms. That's about 3,000 pounds, let's say. Okay? And a 3,000 pound warhead sounds like a lot, doesn't it? I mean, I don't want to be anywhere near a 3,000 pound warhead when it goes off, right? But I want you to put in the comments here. I'm going to take a poll. With a 3,000 pound warhead, if it were to land, let's say in downtown Tel Aviv, that's the most powerful missile Iran has. If that missile lands in downtown Tel Aviv, is a 3,000 pound warhead going to take out a house? Is it going to take out a city block? Or is it going to take out a city? How big of an explosion are we talking about here? I'm going to let you chew on that for a minute and put your answer in the comments. Okay, you tell me what you think is going to get taken out by a 3,000 pound warhead. That's a big warhead for sure. So while you're giving me your answers, a lot of people are saying city block, city block, city block. I'm going to explain to you that they actually only have maybe several dozen of these very large ballistic missiles with the 3,000 pound warhead. Okay, we're not talking about hundreds or thousands of these. Iran does not have that many of the largest of their ballistic missiles. Okay, and they have a long range and they can hit anywhere inside Israel. So I did some back of the napkin calculations. And look, I've been covering wars for 20 years. I was in the military for 8 years before that. And I've been around a lot of explosions. And so I also did some Google research and tried to figure it out. And so from my experience in Ukraine, where Russia has been firing large missiles and rockets at Ukraine, and Ukraine doesn't have the capability to shoot down missiles like Israel does, I would say that a 3,000 pound warhead is not going to take out a building. It would take out a portion of a building. Maybe, if it's a small building, maybe. If it's a large apartment building, it'll take out a good half of it or something like that. A 3,000 pound warhead would not take out a city block. It would take out a portion, maybe a third of a city block. The blast radius of a 3,000 pound warhead is 100 to 200 meters. That's 1 or 2 football fields for those of you that don't do meters, okay? 1 or 2 football fields radius, okay? And that's not completely destroyed. There's going to be damage for 1 to 200 meter radius, depending on what it hits and how it hits. It's going to maybe break windows beyond that. It's going to be a very big boom, but it's not going to destroy half a city, okay? And so if you think about that, and you think about the size of Tel Aviv, with over 1 million people in Tel Aviv, and so let's say that Iran manages, let's say they've got a dozen of these the largest caliber weapons that they possess. And I actually put up, if you go to chuckholton.com, you can see I put up a graphic there that shows you the sizes of the missiles that they have. So this is called an SEJJIL. That's the largest one they have, is a 2,000 kilometer range, and an EMAD, which has a 1,700 kilometer range. These are the ones with the largest warheads on them, I believe. The Shahab's got a pretty big warhead. If you add all of those up, let's say they even had 100 of them, okay? And let's say that all 100 hit somewhere in Tel Aviv. Will it destroy the city of Tel Aviv? No, there's far more than 100 city blocks in Tel Aviv. Somebody could probably Google that and figure it out, or ask ChatGPT, but I can guarantee you there are at least 1,000, well over 1,000 city blocks in the greater Tel Aviv area. And so is there going to be some damage? Yes. Are people going to get hurt and killed? Yes, if those get through. But now let's back up and let's talk about the possibility of them actually striking Israel with these rockets and missiles, because these things are, they're large, and the Iron Dome system can differentiate between a small, let's say a little drone or a large missile like that. And you can bet that the Israeli Air Force and the Iron Dome system are going to be targeting those largest missiles. They're going to be prioritizing those, the more destructive missiles, over the less destructive ones. And we know that just because militaries are large bureaucracies, that not every missile is going to be ready to fire at any given time. Some of them need maintenance. Some of them might be, as we call it in the military, redlined, where they're not actually flyable. They're being used for parts. You know, they're up on blocks, something like that. And so these missiles, if they have 100 of them, there's only usually, I would say, maybe about 70 that we could say would likely be able to be fired. And even those are not all going to be fired at once. It's going to take even 2 or 3 days to get all of those missiles fired. And then Iran doesn't have any of those left. And so they might actually hold some in reserve. So let's say that 70 of them, again, we're giving Iran the benefit of the doubt here. And so let's say that Iran is able to fire 70 of them. Well, we saw in April that the coalition there was 9 different countries that helped Israel shoot down all of those 300 plus rockets, missiles, and drones that were fired at them from Iran. So they had, I mean, this is amazing, but Jordan, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, the UAE, France, the UK, one other country I forget, and the United States, all were helping to shoot all this stuff down. And they have pretty much all agreed to do so again. As a matter of fact, they've even taken a harsher stance this time by announcing ahead of time, by putting the word out to Iran, if you fire missiles and rockets across our sovereign airspace, this is Saudi Arabia that said this today, we will shoot them all down. Okay? So, yeah, we're going to talk about Hezbollah in a minute, so stay tuned, okay? So, I'm just pointing out to you that last time they fired 300 at once, and like 7 of them actually got through into Israeli airspace and landed somewhere. How many of those landed on something important, like a military base? 1. Out of more than 300 rockets, missiles, and drones that were fired in April, 1 of them actually got through to hit a target. This is also because the Iranians' missiles and rockets and stuff are not as accurate as Western rockets and missiles. They're more built on the Soviet sort of template, if you will. And, I've seen a lot of this in Ukraine where Russian rockets, they're precision guided munitions. They'd be lucky to hit hit within a mile of the thing that they're aiming at. Whereas American or Western style precision fires, we can put a missile into a particular window in a particular building. We are accurate within a few feet. Russian or Iranian or Chinese precision fires are accurate to within like 2,000 meters. And so if the Iranians are firing at, let's say, critical infrastructure or something like that, because a 3,000-pound warhead can do a lot of damage if it hits a power substation or a railroad bridge or, something like that, a water plant, let's say, or a weapons depot. But those are much smaller targets, and they're just not accurate enough typically to do that. So they can hit an airfield because airfields are large, they're very, very big. But hitting a water plant or a rocket launcher or something like that is not within the realm of their capability for the most part. Now, they do have more. Okay, so some of you just joined. What I'm talking to you about are the capabilities that Iran has if they go hard and try to fire as many rockets and missiles as they can. What is the worst case scenario for Israel? And the case I'm making is that, number one, Iran does not have thousands and thousands or tens of thousands of missiles that can make it all the way to Israel to begin with. They only have perhaps 1,000 total that have the range to make it to Israel. They're certainly not going to send troops to Israel because they don't have an expeditionary army. They're not going to march across Iraq and Jordan and Saudi Arabia or something like that to get to Israel. And so they're not going to try to put boots on the ground. So it's going to be missiles. That's all they've got. That's all they can do, missiles and drones. And of the missiles that they've got, they have a total of about 1,000. Probably only 70% of them are in working order. Of those, the most dangerous ones are, so you're talking about 700 total. They don't have that many launch vehicles, and so they're likely going to have to fire maybe 100 or a couple hundred at a time, and then, reload, which takes half a day, and then fire some more. So this could go on for several days when it does happen. But that gives Israel, after the first salvo, the ability to track those launch vehicles and take them out. So the number of launches is going to dramatically decrease, each time they try to launch, right? Okay, so somebody says, what about the 83 million rockets in Lebanon? We'll talk about the ones in Lebanon here shortly, okay? And that's a very valid point, and it is something that Israel is going to have to worry more about than they're going to have to worry about what's coming out of Iran. So what Iran doesn't have is they don't have an air force to speak of that can compete with the F-35s, for example, that Israel has. That's almost like a magic bullet for Israel. Israel can do things with those F-35s that Iran just can't stop. And this is probably another reason why they haven't attacked yet, because they know that when they attack, Israel has already put out the word that they're going to destroy things like nuclear reactor sites and things like that, places in Iran, very sensitive sites that Iran does not want destroyed. And so this is not going to be good for Iran when they decide to do this. Now, they are just that prideful that they probably don't care. At least the government does. Now, I know the people of Iran don't want this war any more than the Israelis do. And I know that because I was just in Armenia not too long ago. And there are a lot of Iranians that come to Armenia for vacation because they can drink wine and dance and do things that they can't do in Iran. And I talked to them about this, and they hate the regime. They do not want war with Israel. And so there have even been instances, I've seen pictures of graffiti inside Iran in English saying, "Hit the regime hard, please, Israel." Things like that. That the Iranians are actually begging Israel to hurt the Iranian regime, maybe bad enough that it collapses. That would be ideal for a lot of people in Iran, right? Okay, so Iran also has hundreds, maybe 1,000 drones, but these drones have a much smaller warhead. The largest warhead that these drones that Iran has is something like 65 kilograms. What's that, 120 pounds? That would not blow up an entire house. It would destroy the house. I mean, it would make the house unlivable, but it wouldn't make the house into a smoking crater. It would damage a bunch, let's say a half a dozen or a dozen apartments in an apartment building, but it wouldn't take down the whole apartment building. And so now these things fly slow and they're easier to shoot down. And so it's unlikely that tons of them are going to actually make it to their targets. Not only that, but when the attacks begin, Israel starts jamming the GPS signals all over the whole country. And so when I pull up my location on my map on my phone, it shows that I'm at the airport in Cairo, Egypt. They just spoof the GPS signal, and what that does is it sort of negates the ability for these drones to navigate, and they're stuck with what we would call inertial navigation, and so they're very likely not going to hit their targets at all either. So if 70% of the missiles that Iran has are not are functional, only 70% are functional, and they can only fire maybe a third of those at a time, and then the number that they can fire is going to go down because they're going to lose launch vehicles after that. What you're talking about is, several hundred max. And of those several hundred, only a small percentage of those are going to get past the Iron Dome system and hit something of substance. Because there's a lot of open area in Israel, and so a lot of them are going to land in farmers' fields and things like that, right? So when that being the case, it's just, is this something to worry about? Yes. Is it going to be destructive to Israel? Most likely. Is it going to destroy Israel? Not on your life. Is it going to kill millions of Israelis? No. Is it going to kill thousands of Israelis? Not likely. It's unlikely that hundreds of Israelis would be killed if it was only Iran that was attacking. Okay, but it's not only going to be Iran that attacks. Now, Hassan Nasrallah, the commander of Hezbollah, said in his speech today that they are going to attack, but they may or may not do it in conjunction with Iran. He kind of acted like he was trying to put some separation between the Hezbollah forces and their retaliation for the killing of Fuad Shukr and the retaliation by Iran for the killing of Ismail Haniyeh, or like I like to call him, Wasmail Haniyeh, the only man to meet the current and former presidents of Iran in the same day. So when Hezbollah attacks, now Hezbollah obviously much closer to Israel, and they have, some people say they have hundreds of thousands, over 100,000 rockets, missiles, and drones. That comes somewhat from claims that are made by Hezbollah themselves. And obviously, you can imagine why there would be a lot of reasons why we can't exactly trust Hezbollah to give us the real numbers of how many rockets and missiles they have. Some experts say it could be 25 to 50,000. Okay, but same issue applies to Hezbollah. Not all of them are able to be fired at the same time because they may have that many missiles, but they don't have that many missile launchers. They actually have, shorter range missiles that are, they just put in a tube, and it's like a large firecracker. They light the fuse and then run away and the thing fires itself off. But those launchers are hard to move and hard to hide, and so they get blown up at a very fast clip after they get fired, and they can't be used again. So right now, Israel has moved a bunch more forces up to the north, and if those guys are firing short-range missiles, they're not going to be able to hit like Jerusalem or anywhere south of that. Even their longer-range missiles can hit like Tel Aviv, yes, but beyond Tel Aviv, maybe not. And so this is why Israel is preparing for people to need to temporarily move south out of that combat zone, right? And be able to, avoid the majority of the danger. So if and when this begins, people will, you're going to see the same thing. A number of Hezbollah rockets and missiles and drones are going to misfire. They're not going to work. A bunch that do work are going to get shot down. of the ones that don't get shot down, many of them will fall in unpopulated areas because they're not very accurate. And so that leaves a very small percentage of them that might actually strike something that might hurt somebody, okay? And a lot of them are going to be aimed at military sites that are hardened. Although Hassan Nasrallah has said that they are going to target civilian areas as if they haven't been all along. I mean, if he's saying, oh, now we're going to start targeting civilian areas, if that's actually true, then they're much less accurate than everybody thought they were, because they've been hitting civilian areas ever since the beginning, right? And so Hezbollah is, again, the number of rockets, missiles, and drones. We get these scary numbers. Oh, there's 100,000 of them. Well, they're lying about the numbers. So the number that they actually have that they can use is much smaller. And I went through the reasons why the number of those that are actually going to hit something is a small fraction. Okay? So now Israel, for its part, has very accurate intelligence. They have very accurate precision fires, and they don't waste ammunition on civilian targets. They only blow up things that deserve to be blown up for the most part. And so every one of their shots is going to likely hurt Hezbollah much more than Hezbollah's shots are going to hurt the Israelis. Now, it doesn't mean that there won't be damage. There likely will be a lot more damage than we have seen so far, because they're going to have, like the grand finale at the 4th of July fireworks. They're going to fire everything they can possibly fire at once. But once they fire those, then it's Israel's turn. And when it's Israel's turn, Hezbollah is going to pay a very steep price. No question about that. And that price is going to include Hezbollah's capabilities are going to be degraded significantly for follow-on attacks. Their political clout is going to be degraded significantly because the people already hate them, but they're going to hate them all the more now. And so now here's something funny that's happened today that's sort of unrelated, but as the Israelis have been sort of going, going about their business and, we'll go to the bunker when the rockets actually start flying. As they've been doing that, the IAF, the Israeli Air Force, has been flying sorties over Beirut at very low altitude at like Mach plus. And so they've been creating these massive sonic booms over Beirut all day long. And as Hassan Nasrallah was getting ready to give his speech, it was like kaboom, kaboom, and people were diving under tables and running to their shelters and things like that. And they weren't actually bombing anything; they were just making a show of force, and that has been Israel's choice so far. They don't want to kill civilians. They haven't been randomly firing rockets or missiles. They don't want to waste their ammunition on things that are not worth killing. But flying very, very fast at a very low altitude over Beirut doesn't cost much, and it's kind of fun, and you can do it over and over again. And so the Israelis have been doing that just as a reminder to Hezbollah of what is to come. And let's hope they get the message. Now, I haven't been answering questions because there's almost 9,000 people that have been online. Look, folks, if you haven't hit the like button, please go do that right now and subscribe to CBN's YouTube channel, because that tells YouTube that more people need to see this content, and that gets the word out to more people, right? So please go hit the like button and subscribe. It doesn't cost you anything, but it is very helpful for CBN. And I would recommend that you go to cbn.com and you donate there. You help CBN keep us in the field so we can keep bringing you these reports and this kind of news commentary that maybe you're not getting elsewhere, that might help you put some of this in context and feel a little less anxious about what might be about to happen. Jeff Jerkins is asking about EMPs. I've seen that question go by a bunch. Well, it's here's what I'm going to do. Because there are so many people online and there's so many trolls right now, I'm going to suggest that you go to the Hot Zone with Chuck Holton here on YouTube. Go over there right now. Go to the Hot Zone and subscribe over there. And in about 5 minutes, I'm going to go live on my channel, the Hot Zone with Chuck Holton, right here on YouTube. And maybe one of the moderators can put a link to that up so you can just click on it when we get ready to go over there. And if you have a question, I'm going to do an Ask Me Anything about what's going on right now. So I will do nothing but answer your questions on my channel here in about 4 minutes over there on my YouTube channel. Okay, so let's put the link up. Let's okay. I think it's at Hot Zone Podcast on YouTube, but let me see if I don't know. I'm not sure who's moderating, but maybe whoever's moderating can put that link up so that we don't have to fight through all the trolls and everything. We'll have, it'll be easier to moderate with fewer people online. So if you have a question and you want to ask a question about what's happening right now, just go to Hot Zone Podcast on YouTube, and I will be live in about 3 minutes. Okay? So I'm going to pray right now because we always like to pray at the end of our CBN YouTube lives. And then I'm going to go get a drink of water and come back, and I'll go live on my channel. Okay? So go to the Hot Zone with Chuck Holton in the next few minutes and subscribe over there, and I'll be over there in just a minute. All right? Let's pray. Lord God, we thank you for the fact that we don't have to be afraid no matter what comes. We don't have to fear the future because we know that you're in control. And for those of us who are submitted to you, who are called according to your purpose, you work all things together for good. And Lord, that is such a great comfort to us. And I pray for those people who are just trolling these YouTube lives right now. I want to pray, Lord, that you would send your Holy Spirit to convict them of their need for a Savior, that convict them of your grace and mercy, and to show them that you have a plan for their lives as well, a plan to help them and a purpose and give them meaning in their life, something that's far more meaningful than just trolling a YouTube channel. I don't know, what gives these people the thought that that's a useful thing to do. But Lord, I pray that you would reach out to them right now. I pray for peace in Israel. I pray for peace specifically in Jerusalem. And Lord, I ask that you would protect the Israelis, especially the IDF, who are on the front lines right now. I pray that you would give them wisdom and strength and courage and resilience, Lord, to put up with these attacks. And I pray that you would thwart the plans of evil men, and that those evil men would fall into their own trap, that their missiles and rockets would fall on their own heads, and that Israel would be supernaturally protected by legions of angel armies. In your name, I pray. Amen. Okay, that's all, folks. I'm going to go get a drink of water, and I'll be back in just a minute on the Hot Zone. So go over there and stand by. We'll see you in just a minute. Stop.